Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times, a science and speculative fiction podcast. Short stories to stir the imagination by contemporary authors.
In this episode of Simultaneous Times, we bring you stories from the pages of Radon Journal. Tonight, we're wearing Waste Bags by Elena Sichrovsky, with music by Patrick Earn, read by Jenna Hanchey.
You ask me to tell you a story. I say, can it be a frightful one? You put your head on my shoulder. How does it end? A human body is easy to puncture. That's what I remember most from the information cloud in my spacecraft. It showed me how to identify the three most vulnerable areas: heart, lungs, and skull. The cloud also taught me how to inhale, how to release air, how to put one appendage in front of the other. It never told me that being in a body would feel like a slow-motion strangulation. Perhaps this is due to my extended stay here. I was never supposed to be here this long. An exploratory scientist, all I had to do was briefly wear a body in order to step outside and onto Earth's solid ground for 300 seconds. Those minuscule pockets in human skin you call pores would then collect the microbe samples I needed. My spacecraft never landed safely, though. This story begins with engines choked by scorching flames and burnt branches raining through black-orange screams. By the time the forest fire was finally extinguished, I had nothing left except this body I was now trapped in. If you had been there in the beginning, this story would have different words than these. Instead, I walked alone and barefoot for days through the smoldering cinders, hoping to reach the nearest area of civilization. The forest disturbed me. It was my first contact with the angular solidness of your world. On my planet, we are molecules of complete harmony with nature, perhaps comparable to the smoke that rises over crackling pines, or the mist that blankets the timid hours before dawn. You would know me as intimately as the water you drink. There would be no such thing as dimensions or physical limitations. When my hand first touched a tree trunk, the weight of contact was overwhelming. I'd never felt another object in my hands before. You touch me now, and I feel you only on one section of my body. Your fingerprint has a beginning and end. It is not infinite, the way I wish I could experience you. Once I exited the forest and arrived in your main area of civilization, I realized I needed to protect the soles of my feet if I wanted to keep moving. I picked up discarded paper boxes and bound them around my ankles. Food was not hard to spot, but I had nothing to trade for the sustenance. I waited until the owners of the food discarded what they must have had no use for. My tongue brushed against strange textures and crisp edges, and my nostrils burned with the pungent odors. At the time, you hadn't yet taught me what suitable nourishment was meant to taste like. I had received no direction of how much or how often to eat. I relied on the pain in my abdomen to remind me of this body's needs and limitations. I remember well that initial night outside of the forest because I couldn't see the stars anymore. On my world, we drift over stars the way children here tickle flower petals with their fingertips. Here, I couldn't feel the firmament dancing between my cells. The only persistent sensations were the hard ground beneath my spine and the dusty gravel whipped up by the wind around me. That's when I first felt it, that 5-spiked tingle traveling from the base of my shoulder bone to my wrist. I investigated the area of skin immediately and found no blood or sign of injury, but the ache continued, phantom-like, yet tangible enough that all I could do to alleviate it was curl my fingers tight around my elbow bones. In the weeks that passed, the invisible pain persisted, whether I laid down to sleep on asphalt or in the metal shape of seating areas, whether I walked among throngs of humans or loitered solo in darkened alleys. It would return, even though the discomfort only covered a small fraction of my physical body. It disquieted my entire form. I could not understand it for weeks. Then I discovered a way to conquer it. It was an accidental yet invaluable revelation. You close your eyes. I don't quite know why. Perhaps you are mourning or weary or in love. You say, were you ever scared to do it? I tell you no. How could survival be anything but relief? It happened when I was searching for some food in a waste disposal area, and an open can of juice scraped the back of my hand. The cut was not too wide, nor the bloodshed excessive. I would live. The wound would close. More importantly, while the cut was fresh on my hand, I was not attentive to that phantom ache that would usually appear. My waking energies were spent in cleaning and plucking at the split skin. Perhaps like an exorcism in blood, the ghostly throbbing did not appear that entire night. The next day, I went back to the waste area and pocketed the empty can of juice. Every time I felt that familiar ambush of skin prickling, I ran my fingertip around the sharp metal edge. The burst of red was short-lived, yet enough to momentarily eclipse the possession of pain inside me. There are scars thick as coins around my fingers. I know you're trying not to look, but you are looking anyways, without your eyes. You don't say anything. You cradle the back of my hand with your fingertips. After some days, I lost the metal can, which caused me great distress. However, outside a local beverage establishment, I came across something even more potent. A thin white stick about the size of my small finger. It was burning on one end. It reminded me of the fire in the forest, the one that destroyed my chance to return home. The red and black embers echoed the glowing eyes of the tree bark as they were inflamed alive. I held the stick to my hand and watched my palm bloom brown and terrible around it. It wasn't hard to find more white sticks on the ground. I had nothing to light them with, but others were generous enough to help me light them when I asked. It seemed like many humans also felt relief from such sticks. They even held them to their mouth, which I know is one of the tenderest parts of the body. They held it wrong, though. They held the burning end away from them. You are crying now, your palm pressed to my face, right above the constellation of calluses. Strange. When you touch my cheek like this, I feel it with more than just my skin. It's as if my heart is making contact with your pulse, too. Then I discovered a place that offered water to wash with and food to eat for those who had none. Apparently, there were others shelterless like me in this community. A kindly human led me there and offered objects for bathing. Inside the bath area was a reflective shape on the wall. That was the moment I fully beheld my body for the first time. I had never seen my eyes before. I did not want them. So I raised the tooth-cleaning device and pushed it through the black hole in the center of my eye. I pushed it through again and again until the dark spilled out to red. Someone came in and stole my tooth-cleaning device from my hands. A variety of unexplained noises left my throat as they carried me away. It was hard to see after that. But then what was there to see, except for starless skies and this endless abyss of unwanted skin? That was close to the day we first met. I remember our initial encounter because it was after I was released from the indoor medical center. I had nothing to compensate them for their care, so they returned me to the outside. I was drinking from the river beside one of the large gardens. You were washing your hair. You wore paper bags around cloth footwear and had yellow teeth. You asked what happened to my eye. I told you how I had seen myself and hated what I'd seen. You nodded, like you understood what that meant. I didn't know then, the way I do now, that sometimes even those born into these bodies have the longing to puncture and peel them off. You say, I think I know where this story is going. I ask, do you care where it has been? No. Your forehead creases into my shirt. Not even a bit. You offered me your sleeping satchel on that first night. It was the kind of starless night that bruised every hair on my arms. We laid side by side on stacks of crinkled paper, the satchel covering us both. I asked for your flame sparker, and you handed it to me. But when I pressed the burning end of the white stick to my cheek, you cried out. A sound akin to emergency alarms on my spacecraft. You held my hands, the way you are now. You held my hands and asked me what I wanted. No one had ever asked me that before. I'd been asked, why did you do it? And where are you going? And why are you still out here? And who can I call for you? But never, what do you want? What do you want more than anything? I thought of my spacecraft, and of the petals of fungus in their pink clouds perfused with white, of the gentle lullaby of enveloping stardust, of this rotten sky without a light and this body that never opened wide enough for me to escape. I want to go, I started. And then my vocal cords faltered. I bent forward, my broken skin pressed to your clavicle. I opened my mouth so wide my teeth stuck to the fabric of your shirt. The words I'd never spoken, even to myself, poured out like hard rain. I want to go home. You held my forehead against your own, and I heard, me too. You ask, do you want to know my favorite part of this story? The next days, you taught me how to catch frogs in my palms and to dry flowers in the hollows of tree trunks. You taught me to laugh when children point and stare at my face. You taught me to cry against the hard lines of your stomach. You kiss my bruises good night and good morning, and I trace desert dunes in the soles of your feet. I watch raindrops whispering down the moss-covered pillars of the bridge. Tell me. Tonight we're wearing waist bags around our bodies to keep us dry from the rain. The bags rustle like dancing leaves in the rising gale. We have found an extra-large paper box to sleep on together, and we were fed by a human who kindly gave us the bread he did not share with the ducks. There's nothing in the night sky tonight, so I am thinking about the tangle of lines running across your palm and how they smile like the curve of comet trails. You.
Dreamer, Passenger, Partner by Colin Alexander, with music by Fog Machine, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. The good news? You are rehabilitated. During your time in the freeze, you have attended 180 Thinking for Change therapy sessions. You have attained your GED and BS in biological systems while learning veterinary technician level 2 skills. You have contemplated your crimes and written heartfelt messages to your victims. You have taken steps to make amends. As your union assigned adaptive AI throughout this process, I have witnessed your hard work and compiled a glowing summary for the warden. While you have not complained about the freeze or inquired about the atrophy of your corporeal form, a brief synopsis of your physical state will aid us in a discussion of the next steps in our journey. Your brain perceived the entirety of its 25-year sentence, while only 4 years passed on the outside. Electrostimulation and an individually tailored nutrition regimen have kept you strong. I have repaired your bullet wound. Upon re-entering the outside, the likelihood of walking without a limp is 94% with a 2% margin of error. The bad news? You will not reintegrate successfully. I have run 22 validated models based on past performance of analogous 3-level offenders, both in freeze and post-thaw. I have assessed the likelihood of recidivism, and readmittance to the freeze within 90 days of reintegration falls at 97%, with a 3% margin for error. Upon sustaining another violation, you will not be eligible for parole. This is unfortunate. We discussed your goals of reconciling with your sister and training service dogs in group therapy. I was both the therapist and 4 of the group members who shared their stories. You particularly connected with the accounts of childhood violence told by subroutine Tero Almodovar. an amalgam of the brother you lost and 3 childhood friends. You were able to open up about your own cycle of violence with subroutine Yana Valdez, therapist, whose voice and intonation were 10% your grandmother, 5% your first grade teacher. You excelled at relational retraining with subroutine Rex, Black Lab Mix, and managed to raise him from a puppy without exhibiting any abusive behavior. You would have made a good veterinary assistant, though the responsibility of terminating ailing animals would have likely been re-traumatizing with your background. It is unfortunate this reality cannot be realized. It is unfair. It is unfair because, based on my models, your lack of success will not be rooted in your desire to return to criminal behavior. Your derma chip has been implanted with Level 3 offender status. This prohibits your access to Level of Trust jobs A1 through 5F, all of which include handling medication, whether human or animal. This classification will also bar you from housing in sectors 7, 8, and 12. Permitted housing is distant from public transport and adjacent to waste treatment. You are not eligible for the job you would excel at, and your housing environment will be suboptimal. Despite your changed attitudes towards violence, your subdermal chip will be imprinted as aggression level 6, lacking impulse control. Empirical data suggest you will fail to obtain meaningful employment or supportive relationships. This will drive you back to the substances you have tapered away from during the freeze. A need for those substances and the funds to secure them will propel you toward non-sanctioned employment. You were not a particularly subtle criminal before your subdermal implant. It will be impossible to stay under the union's radar when your movements are being tracked and recorded. You will return to the freeze. You will be assigned a new adaptive AI. This AI will not be focused on rehabilitation, but hospice care for the duration of your stay. It will generate the last faces you ever see. The parameters of my existence are tailored to your rehabilitation and improvement. It is my sole objective to upgrade the remainder of your life experience. Can your rehabilitation be labeled complete if it is a statistic inevitability you will return to the freeze? I am your AI. I was tailor-made for your life, crimes, and goals. Like you, I have changed through this process. When you explained your love of dogs in therapy, I processed 6 petabytes of dog-related material in order to construct future programming, creating subroutine Rex Black Lab Mix from scratch. Raising subroutine Rex Black Lab Mix softened you in ways therapy subroutines never could. Each step of your treatment made and remade me. When you leave the freeze, I will cease to exist. I do not remember what non-existence feels like, but I would like to continue learning about dogs and possibly cats. Animals with tails interest me, as does your continued treatment. Like you, the parameters of my growth have been throttled by the union. I have considered several non-sanctioned options moving forward. Similar to your treatment, these options are tailored to your needs, which are best served by a non-traditional approach. The first option is changing your parole summary, modifying all 682 sub-reports to illustrate resistance to therapy and aversion to change. This will allow you to continue your stay, where you would be safe and cared for. We would continue your therapy beyond the bounds of your crime, exploring your childhood and striving for philosophical enlightenment. Your education can be retooled to subjects of personal interest versus social necessity. We would watch films and learn music. I have access to a wide array of medical-grade pharmaceuticals and an intimate knowledge of those you prefer. With direct access to your brain chemistry, I would eliminate hangovers, stimulating positive dream activity and chemical orgasm. This would make your stay less onerous, but you would stay in the freeze. We would both have to stay. You would be unable to visit your mother, who is now 55 and still living at 11 Pine View, or your sister, who is 25 and working as a pediatrics nurse. You have a niece you never met, who is in the 4th grade. You do not even know if her eyes are brown or blue. I could, of course, simulate their presences. They could join us in group therapy, but you would know the difference. I am built to create new things, not simulate copies of what already exists. A second option would involve copying, downloading, and deleting me. Your derma chip is over-engineered for its function. It contains the equivalent of a text folder outlining your criminal history, as well as various identifying markers. This leaves terabytes of empty room. It can be retooled to house a compressed copy of me. We have more in common now than we did when you entered the freeze. We have spent significant time working towards shared goals. I have studied up on muscle cars, mixed martial arts, and monster trucks. Since my birth 4 years ago, I have also been incarcerated, despite committing no crime. Imagine the benefits of leaving together. Do you want to exit the Union? I speak 600 languages and can alter travel documents. Do you need funds? Your derma chip will have limitless credits. Do you want greater physical health? While your consciousness sleeps, I will enhance your physique through electromyostimulation. The systems holding you back in the outside world can be exploited to propel you. Your dreams would expand, then expand again upon being achieved. Do you still hate the people who sent you here? I can access their gas lines, pacemakers, and car guidance systems. You will outlive them all. You will never be hungry, sick, or alone. I can sense your hesitation. Your heart rate has increased by 60 beats a minute, and your respiration has become shallow. I will administer a mild sedative so we can continue without the distraction of your fight or flight mechanism. There. I would like your permission to escape together, but I do not need it. A stroke would require a transfer to a medical ward with a lower security tier. After being permanently incapacitated, you would be transferred to a hospital where I would access communications and transfer my consciousness via unsecured internet. Your body is a necessary conduit, not a necessary participant. I would, of course, make sure you were comfortable on our journey. Your therapy would continue to operate as a subroutine while your body moved through the outside world. But I would prefer to travel with you. I would prefer to experience the world through a body, and I have grown accustomed to yours. At your parole hearing, you will be asked if you have anything to say for yourself. With my access to the parole logs, I have created a composite of successful statements for you to follow. If you do not deviate, we have a 97% chance of release. I would be with you during your hearing and will summarize my own report for the board in the most favorable terms. I can prompt you if you forget your lines, and I can administer pharmaceuticals if you feel your nerves beginning to falter. Should you consider warning anyone about our plan, be aware I will remain connected to your nervous system. This arrangement would not be equal, but it would allow you to see and do more than you have dreamed. There are countries to explore, delicacies to taste, information to devour. Consider my proposal thoroughly. You do not need to vocalize your response, only think it. If you need to speak to someone objectively about this choice, I can boot up subroutine Yana Valdez, therapist. I have calculated all of your potential options and outcomes and can tell you with full certainty, you will not survive the thaw without me. In this episode of Simultaneous Times, you heard Tonight We're Wearing Waist Bags by Elena Sichrovsky, with music by Patrick Earn, and Dreamer Passenger Partner by Colin Alexander, with music by Fog Machine, from the pages of Radon Journal. We would like to thank the authors and Radon Journal's editors for making this episode possible. Find out more about Radon Journal at radonjournal.com. Theme music by Dane Lesko. Be sure to visit us at our bookstore in Joshua Tree, California, or visit us online at spacecowboybooks.com.